going to be showing you all a little bit how I take care of my goats and horses. This won't be a full video on everything that I have to do every day or even just for their care, but I'll just give you all a quick overview. So what I'm going to be doing today is going out to check on the goats and the horses. So I have a red bucket behind me that I'm just going to fill up with some treats. So I'll just put a couple handfuls in here to take out to them. And then I like to add probiotics to their treats when I give them treats. It just is like beneficial, healthy bacteria for their stomachs and their guts, because it just is good to keep them nice and healthy. So I give them some probiotics when I give them some treats. So we'll take that out. I also have in my bucket some carrots for the horses so that I have that for them. The other thing I need to do today is give some electrolytes to our goats. It's pretty much like Gatorade for goats. It's just good for them to make sure that they're drinking water and stuff like that. So I'm going to put electrolytes in my bucket. The other thing that goats always need is minerals. So they have loose mineral and a mineral block that I always have out for them. So I just replaced their goat mineral yesterday. But this is, it's just loose kind of mineral. So I give that to them and just refill that as they eat it. It's pretty much just like salt and a bunch of other stuff. So the last thing I'm going to put in this bucket is fly spray for our horses. They might have some flies on them today, so I'm just going to take out some fly spray to try to get flies off of them. It's pretty much just like bug spray. So we're going to go on outside now. So while the goats eat their treats, I'm just going to come over, check their water. They still have plenty of water, but their bucket with electrolytes is totally empty. So I'm going to go over to our rain catcher and fill that up with water, clean out the bucket, and then add some electrolytes. Okay, so now I am over where we catch all of our rainwater. It just filters in down through the gutters into this bucket, so that we're able to use some of our rainwater and not waste all of it. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit at the bottom, and then I have a brush that I'm going to clean this bucket out with really fast, because I like to make sure that my goats have nice clean water. So I'm going to let this fill up, and while that fills up, we need about 6 quarts of water. And then I'm going to add 2 scoops of these electrolytes. It just is a powder. So I'm going to add 2 scoops of that and then take it back out to the goats. Another really important thing of taking care of goats is just making sure you spend time with them. They really are kind of similar to dogs, or at least mine are. So I really like to make sure that I spend a lot of time with them. Right now I'm just brushing them, making sure they're not eating my hair. Butter over here really likes it, and so does Leroy. So I just like to brush my goats to make sure that they're nice and healthy and their skin looks good and their fur. Just make sure that they're kind of clean. The other thing goats need is a shelter. They really don't like the rain, so I like to make sure that my goats have shelter, and then I also put down straw in there. Goats are also natural climbers, so we have a couple little blocks for them to climb on. And other than that, they're pretty simple. They just really like their mineral and their treats, and you can feed them a lot of leftover like vegetables and stuff like that. So I always feed them any leftover lettuce or cucumber that we have, and that's about it. brushing them and putting on fly spray is always a really important part about caring for your horses in the summer, because the flies can be pretty bad this time of year. Luckily, flies haven't been that bad recently, so normally we put fly masks on the horses, but because the flies haven't been that bad, we haven't had to do that. So now I'm just going to feed them some carrots, because they were really good when I put their fly spray and they just kind of hung out while I brushed them. So you can see they really like their carrots. So I'm just going to feed these to them. And that's pretty much all I have to do today. Other than brushing them, putting on fly spray, horses have to have a salt block, which is just like a block of salt, and it has a bunch of minerals and nutrients in there, and they will just naturally go over and lick it as they need. They obviously need fresh water, so I filled up their watering, scrubbed their bucket yesterday, so I don't have to do that today. Right now they just eat grass, so we have plenty of grass here for them to eat, but in the winter we'll have to feed hay. Things that you haven't seen is every 8 weeks we have to get the horses shoed, so we have a farrier out to put on horseshoes for Wiggles and Tiger, and then Rosa doesn't wear shoes, so she just gets her hooves trimmed, pretty much like trimming her fingernails. Other than that, it's really important to give your horses exercise, so we're very lucky that all of our horses are working horses, and we don't have any retired yet, even though Rosa is 20, so she's about 60 and people age. So yeah, they're a lot of work, but I love them and it's so worth it, and they're pretty much like my therapy. So anyway, that is what I do on a day-to-day basis to take care of my goats and my horses. We can see Rosa actually went over to lick on their salt block. She really likes the salt, especially after getting a treat. So these come in 50-pound blocks, and you can see they've licked off quite a bit so far. So that was by no means a full list of things that we have to do for the horses and goats every day. The goats also need hooves trimmed every now and then, every couple weeks. And there's just a bunch of things that goes into owning horses and goats that you don't always think about. So they're really difficult, but they're so worth it, and I love that I'm fortunate enough to have them here with me.
Hey, welcome back. So today we're going to work on our hydro tower, and we're going to plant our newly growed sprouts in the hydro tower and talk about some fun stuff like pH and
we're also going to be adding our nutrients. So there's 2 types of nutrients that we have to add to this. So first we're going to plant, and then we will talk about pH and the nutrients. Alright, so now that we have all of our plants planted in the tower garden, we have to add our nutrients. So we have nutrients A and B. We are going to use this little measuring cup to put 20 milliliters of each of them into the tower garden. And then once we're done with that, we are going to test our pH and make sure that it's right. I think our pH is supposed to be between 4.5 and 6.5 for this.
kind of smells like laundry detergent.
Does it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Did you waft it?
I did not at first. I did after.
Then you did after.
Wafting, if you didn't know, kiddos, is the science term for waving the smell towards your face instead of going over it. So if you got something that's really bad for you, it doesn't go directly into your nose. Do what, huh?
I did like 50.
Oh, okay.
There's not a 20 milliliter measuring mark on there, so we're just gonna do 50.
Sounds like we're putting stuff in a toilet.
Okay, so I'm just going to use this to kind of stir everything around, and then if you want to grab that little like thing. So our pH test, like what's it called? Like color chart?
Test strip,
Color chart. So they give you this little vial and you fill it up. We're just following the directions on the back of the pH test kit. So it tells us to fill it up 5 milliliters.
So what she did is she took a sample of water from the tower, and now she's making a sample in the tube. And then what we're gonna do is add some chemicals to it that allows us to see the acidity of it and or whether or not it's basic. And we're going to measure it accordingly, given this chart. So this is gonna change color depending on how much acid this water actually contains. Now, maybe you wanna talk a little bit about pH, or are we gonna go to a chart for that?
We will talk about that over there. So what we're looking for is between 5.5 to 6.5.
All right, so we're at 6.5, it looks like.
Yeah, so we're about at 6.5, which is a little bit on the higher end. This Tower Garden kit does come with like lowering your pH and adding your pH solution, or lowering and raising your pH. So if we wanted to lower it a little bit, we would just put in a little bit more acid solution.
And when we're talking about acids and bases, the equivalent at your house, the base is gonna be more like a milk, okay? The acid's gonna be anything that's citrus or like tomatoes, things like that. Those are really high in acid. So we're just trying to find that medium.
Cool. So pH is something that we are going to test every week, so we'll probably test it every Friday, because that will change based off of how much nutrients is left and how much nutrients the plants eat up, and then also based off of the water level, and it can just change because we just added plants. Okay, so now, okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about pH. And what that means. So for our Tower Garden, we're looking for something that is a little bit more on the acidic side, which means that it's going to have more H+ or hydrogen ions in the water. So when we're looking at normal, like rain water, we're looking at a neutral pH, which is like a pH of 7. Our tap water can vary just a little bit just because we add some things to our tap water. But on average, water is like our neutral basic 7. If you're looking at higher numbers, you're looking at like a more basic solution. So our pH scale goes from 0, which is acidic, all the way to 14, which is on our basic side. And if something is more of a basic solution, it has more OH ions in it.
Okay, so home applications, right? So a lot of you may have experienced this yourself, or you've heard your parents complain about something called acid reflux. And you're thinking, oh God, there's acid inside of them, right? Well, the problem is our stomachs are perfectly designed to have a natural acid content inside of them that helps break down your foods. We'll learn that and talk more about that during digestion. But the problem is sometimes those acids can get out of whack and they can fluctuate back and forth. And when they do, sometimes those acids will make their ways up through our digestive tract and will give us that sense of heartburning. And you might have heard of that. Well, a lot of the things that we do for heartburn is take an antacid. And an anti, we know that means the opposite of, or so in this case, acid means that it's a base, so we're adding more bases, kind of like we talked about doing with our plants if they get too high in acid content, and it helps bring that back down to a normal state so that we don't feel that heartburn feeling. But all it does is it starts to bring that more towards that neutral stance in our stomach. So that's your at-home version of what we use pH.